Hello, this is psychologist Yulia Latunenko. Today we have an interesting topic, one that probably troubles everyone who has ever been in a relationship with a toxic partner. Why are we so drawn to partners who end up mistreating us? Why is it impossible to leave all at once? Why do such relationships sometimes feel like a carousel? That's what we'll be talking about today. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so. Give this video a like and leave a comment. Any activity from you really helps promote my channel on YouTube. So why are we so drawn to abusers? Why do we even like them at all? Let's take a deeper and more detailed look at the underlying reasons that drive a victim to be attracted to a toxic partner. Well, the primary reason on this list that I truly want to mention is, of course, childhood traumas, which invariably make a person infantile and codependent. The very reason a person is codependent is the lack of separation from their parents during adolescence. You might object and say that you've been living far from your parents for a long time, that you haven't depended on them for ages, but physical separation. This is not psychological separation. These are completely different things. If there's still chaos in your relationships with partners, if you're still dissatisfied with the quality of these relationships, it means that separation from your parents either hasn't been completed or hasn't even begun. Codependency is characteristic of an immature person's psyche. Codependency is a symptom that during adolescence a person did not cross the threshold after which they can consider themselves an adult, psychologically adult. Yes, you may know how to earn money, you may know how to build a business, but psychologically you remain little children who want to have a good mother, a good father. And if childhood traumas have caused such a disruption in a person's development, then instead of looking for an adult partner with whom they can build a true partnership, they look for a partner who will solve all their problems, onto whom it is convenient to project the image of a father or mother. But most of all, here we are talking about what happened to you. From 0 to 3 years old, that is, this is much more about the mother than about the father. Usually childhood traumas manifest themselves in adulthood in such a way that they repeat the scenario of those relationships with the father or mother with whom you had more frustrated, more traumatic or dramatic relationships. That is, if you had a very difficult relationship with your mother in childhood, it is your mother whom you will look for in your partner. If it was with your father, then of course you will look for your father. But the attachment style is formed precisely by the age of 3. That is, in the first months of life, the first years of life, it is still the mother's task to form a healthy attachment style. You all know that people with codependent and counter-dependent tendencies do not have healthy attachment styles. These are either avoidant, avoidant, or anxious attachment styles. A healthy attachment style is actually quite rare and usually only found in people who have worked through their childhood traumas and become aware of how those traumas affect their adult lives. So you could say that this healthy attachment style is formed during a child's development if the mother herself has worked through her own childhood traumas, if she is able to form the kind of attachment that will later allow the child to choose a healthy partner for themselves in adulthood. Because all these unhealthy attachment styles are exactly what attract into your adult life the model you are used to. In other words, the psyche is arranged in such a way that it gravitates toward the scenario it already knows. That is, you won't choose what is unfamiliar to you because you don't know how to build healthy adult relationships. You know how to build codependent, anxious relationships, toxic relationships. And you will choose exactly the kind of partner who will make you confront your own internal problem. Let's put it this way. I always tell my clients that the toxic partner is essentially that teacher, that mirror, which reflects our problems back to us. It shows us what we need to work on. Of course, codependent people have poor boundaries, and codependent people have a lot of fear of being abandoned, of being seen. And it's precisely the toxic partner, the abuser, who, by the way, is also a traumatized child, but from the other side, there's the victim and there's the sadist. This is that kind of sadist partner. He is actually very sensitive to the needs that you have. So this search, the search for a good father or a good mother in a partner, is exactly what leads us to attract toxic people. Why are we so attracted to abusers? Why can't we leave even when we already realize that the relationship is toxic? And rationally, we understand that that's it, we need to leave, but somehow we just can't manage to do it. It's something so complicated that sometimes it feels like if I break off this relationship, it's as if I'm losing my arm, my leg, or some part of my body, along with the abusive partner. That's how strong emotional dependence can be. As I mentioned a bit earlier, the abuser, or as we simply say, the toxic person, the toxic partner, at the very beginning of the relationship, calculates and figures out exactly what you need. They give you exactly what you crave so much: love, tenderness, attention. In other words, they become like a good dad or a good mom for you. And here you fall deeply into a very powerful emotional trap, where it genuinely seems to you, well, that's absolutely it. Here they are, I've finally found that perfect partner. A truly understanding individual who will undoubtedly give me everything I've profoundly needed throughout my entire life. Everything I never truly received or experienced before this moment. In childhood, there was a lot of physical contact, wonderful sex, hugs, attention, your thoughts. Your partner seems to read you perfectly. They guess everything you need. And it seems to you, well, here they are. The perfect ideal partner has come into your life. But as soon as you fall into this trap, into this emotional dependency, everything changes. Why does it change? As I already mentioned, this is also a person who was traumatized in childhood, but in a slightly different way. Usually such a partner has a narcissistic trauma. There may also be psychopathy, and we won't analyze this issue too deeply right now. But this is a traumatized person who also experienced abuse from their parents in childhood, but they chose to take the path of the sadist, to act out everything that has accumulated, everything they feel towards their mother or father. If we take a man as an example, he may have a lot of subconscious grievances against his mother, who may have interfered, mocked, shamed, judged, devalued, criticized, or humiliated him. She controlled him, and all of this became deeply embedded in this person's subconscious. And then he meets a wonderful woman who falls in love with him. And this wonderful person becomes the perfect object for him to project all that pain, that trauma, everything his mother caused him. He will work it all out on his wife, on his chosen partner. He will mock, criticize, devalue, ridicule, and act superior toward her. For this to happen, he needs you to be dependent on him. And if you are a man, of course, there can also be emotional dependence on such a woman. She will swing you on a seesaw, up and down, up and down. One moment she's very nice, and then like a witch, she's scary and toxic. And these swings are characteristic of codependent relationships. And it is exactly these significant swings that create such a profound dependence, because these very swings powerfully play with your delicate hormones. First a rush of dopamine, then a surge of cortisol, and subsequently a jolt of adrenaline. All these dramatic swings, of course, significantly affect your overall health and well-being, and are connected to the release of certain hormones. They are responsible for both joy and pain and suffering. That's why you even become hormonally dependent on such a person. And with your mind, you understand everything and tell yourself, well, I know I need to leave, but why can't I? And so you try to leave, you break up with such a partner, but then he becomes nice and puts on a sugar-coated show for you. You can't live without him, you suffer. You cry, then you go back to him because he promises you it won't happen again. But everything repeats itself. And people can go through these cycles of leaving and coming back 5 times, 10 times until it finally ends. That limit, that rock bottom after which there is no lower to go. But at the end of such a relationship, a person is left completely exhausted, mentally, physically, with illnesses, and even financially exhausted. But as I said, leaving is very frightening because it's terrifying to go through the pain you once experienced when you were abandoned as a child. Because when an adult is left, they don't experience pain as intense as death itself. It's the child, the inner child, who experiences a partner's abandonment as the end of life, as death. Because a child cannot survive in this world without parents, it's terrifying for them. The way you feel is the way that little child without parents feels. Because you have already projected onto your abuser or your mother, most likely your mother, since the earliest of these things. The traumas that happen before the age of 3 play out in such relationships. But you might forget everything, not remember what happened to you before the age of 3. But all the feelings you experience in your relationship with your abuser are early experiences. Unfortunately, we may not remember anything at all, and it might seem to us that everything was fine. But if an abuser appears in your life, it means only one thing. Nothing was actually fine back then. If you haven't subscribed to my channel and are watching without a subscription, please subscribe and like this video. And please write a comment with more than 7 words. Because YouTube's algorithms work in such a way that it specifically comments with more than 7 words. Those comments are counted as full-fledged comments. And that really helps promote my YouTube channel. And I will keep making more and more interesting content for you. Topics. See you in the next episode.